All right. How are we doing?
I'm doing it.
Good? Up, down, living the dream? All right, that's great. I'm not sure whose dream I'm living, but I'm living a dream.
I was gonna say whose dream exactly?
Good point. Good point. But if you're doing great, excellent. We'll take it. Um, so this is week 4. So this is the week where people normally start realizing what they've gotten themselves into in the semester. And so in this class, it's a really easy week. Okay? This is a week to get caught up on things. If you're caught up in this class, great. Get caught up in the other classes. But I backpedal a little bit. There's only one video in Moodle for this week, and it was on Cheetah Rivera, which I introduced you to her last week. Last week. And then she passed, and so I put her another video of her stuff there, just because. And we've got the vocabulary list, which this week it's the first 2 pages of the list. The list is 4 pages long, and we're going to do the first 2 pages quick. The quiz will go live tomorrow sometime, and you'll have a week to fill it in. So there's no stress. And there's not a lot of content uploaded this week, so that it's very easy for y'all to just sort of chill. Like I said, get caught up. Go back and look at those discussions. Go back and look at the videos if there's stuff you haven't looked at. So that's what this week is for. We will meet on Thursday because I want to go through a couple of things. But basically today, I just wanted to talk a bit about life in theater after high school. So talk about some of the opportunities and what that range of commitment looks like. So a lot of people in high school do theater because it's a social thing, right? It's someplace where you're hanging out with folks, or you want to be in the big musical, or you want to work backstage on the big musical, or whatever. There's a lot of different reasons socially for people getting into theater. There's also the idea that theater is the safe space for all the nerds and weirdos, which it is, right? Because we're all weird, we're all eccentric. And so that's another big help for you. So there's a lot of reasons why people go into theater in high school. The challenge with high school theater is that so much of what you do, if you're backstage, you're pretty much doing everything backstage, unless you have a very specific skill set. Even if you're not really good at singing and dancing, you can still get into the chorus of Beauty and the Beast, right? I mean, there is that wide range of opportunities, but you don't really get a chance to focus on what you want to do. And so when you get out of high school and you come to college, you get those opportunities to say, I really want to do theater, but I only want to do props, or I really want to just build sets. And as we said the other day, our theater department is all-inclusive. As long as you're a Casper College student, if you want to come and build sets, great. If you want to come and sew costumes, fantastic. If you want to just come and paint, let us know. You don't have to be a major to come and help put the show together. When it comes to running the show, you don't have to be a theater major or a dance major or any music major. Again, we welcome your participation. We love having fresh new people coming into the shops and working on the shows. So in that case, we welcome you to come in and play with us. Come work with us. So that's an opportunity for you to say, hey, I did sort of do lights in high school, and I think I want to learn more. Great. Let's explore that for you. I really liked it. I want to audition. Great. Come and audition. The auditions get posted, and in theory, that's an email blast that goes out to all students that auditions are on a certain date. So there is that level of participation. And of course, you can get a degree in theater. You can get an associate's degree in technical theater, theater performance, musical theater performance, or dance. So that's an opportunity if you really want to focus on education and training. Our goal is to train you to be in the best place to transfer to a 4-year school or 6-year school if you're wanting a master's degree. Very few people are in a position to go into the professional world in theater with an associate's degree. You almost always have to have at least a bachelor's degree, at least, if not a master's. Now, when I graduated with my BA, I went right into professional theater, and I was performing and I was doing costumes. When I had to decide if I was going to keep touring or if I was going to stop and teach for a while, I found out that I had to have a master's degree to be certified to teach at the college and university level. So I got an MFA in theater and in technical theater, and so now I can teach at a college and university. The catch is that if I didn't have a master's degree, the credits that you'd get from my classes wouldn't transfer to other colleges and universities. And so that's really important for us. So I've got it. You're clear. Your credits will transfer. But that's part of the process to know where you go. Now, I worked in theater for 33 years out on the road and didn't have a master's degree. That's cool. It just depends on what you want to do. We've got a student here now. She's a really good stage manager. She wants to focus on stage management and dramaturgy. Dramaturgy is dissecting a script, the history of the script, the history of the environment that's being creative. So if we're talking about Anton Chekhov's Cherry Orchard, it's the turn of the century between 1800s and 1900s. It's Russia. It used to be a well-to-do family that's not so well anymore. And so the person directing the show is creating the world, but there's a dramaturg over on the side that's researching all of the socioeconomic details, all of the vocabulary used in the script, all of the support for where this world is coming from, and providing it to either the designers or to the actors. So that's a really cool, if you're really a research nerd, that's a really cool job to have, is dramaturg. We also have, if you're into psychology and theater, we also have intimacy coaches and directors. And that's, and it's fairly new within the past 15, 20 years, but every time there is a kiss on stage, right? And especially with young performers, you have to create safe boundaries and safe spaces for the creativity, but still know that you're being kissed and what that structure is. So it's just like fight choreography in terms of, I put my hand here on beat 2, I put my hand here on beat 3, I do this. What's the level of intensity of that touch? What is the speed of that touch? So you study all of those things, everywhere from a kiss to two people being in bed and simulating sex. So an intimacy coordinator does the training to know how to do that safely and professionally so that nobody gets hurt. You know, you all have heard, in high school about, theater romances where they fall in love during the show because every night for 4 hours he's looking into your eyes and telling you he loves you and telling you, that this is the most important thing in your life, and then you get to the end of the show and he's not, and that's not a safe situation. So to create those situations where young performers know the reality and not, those boundaries also go to being backstage. When I'm measuring students, when I'm, me coming to a student who I've never met before, who's a freshman, being measured their first time at college, there's a power play, right? There's a I have more authority than you do. There's a personal, there may be a personal threat. I look like somebody's uncle, and so they don't trust me right off the bat. They're nervous about coming into the costume shop for the first time because they don't know what to expect. So I have to make them feel comfortable. I have to let them know what I'm doing. And so there's a whole set of pieces of information that we share in that interaction. And we're going to go into detail a little bit on Thursday with that. But that's a whole nother field of intimacy coaches and intimacy directors and intimacy coordinators. Even with complete works of Shakespeare, the conversation came up this morning about the director, Cameron, wanting to have, there's a couple of kisses, because it's Romeo and Juliet, it's, Macbeth, it's all these other things. And there are places where the characters are supposed to be close to each other, either in proximity or even exchanging touches. Our cast is 3 men. And so how do you set that up so that nobody's feeling threatened, so that everybody's safe, and so that it's consistent and repeatable? Again, we'll get into the specifics and the structure of that some on Thursday. But that's a whole nother area. If you're into psychology and into theater, that's another great area. So when we talk about where you can go from high school to college and beyond, there are 3 organizations, and I put them up on the board. AACT is the American Association of Community Theaters, which is actually a very big organization. Every year there's a conference. And then in the that's the even years. In the odd years, there's a play festival where the best community theater plays from around the country come to compete for awards and prizes. So the American Association of Community Theaters hosts these festivals. There is a chapter here in Wyoming. There's one in Colorado. There are organizations, there are community theaters that belong to AACT, Cheyenne, Casper. I think Gillette does or did belong. So tell me, what do you think when you hear community theater?
A smaller one.
Mm-hmm.
Like a little bit smaller, a little more everyone knows everyone sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Middle school theater type of stuff.
Right. It's usually not a lot of real heavy material. It's usually pretty simple. It's usually very, very light, very fun, usually. It is very small most of the time. And the fun thing is that once you get into it and find out, AACT covers every community theater, any kind of community theater. So if it's 5 friends that get together once a year and put on a play, and they do it in the church basement, that's community theater, and that's included. Stage 3 here in town has their building. They've got their building. They've got an executive director. They have a board of directors. They do shows, 6 or 8 shows a year, right? But those are all volunteers that are working to put on a show. So the community theaters in this country range from those kinds of groups to groups like Midland Playhouse in Texas, Omaha Community Playhouse, Des Moines Playhouse. The Omaha Community Playhouse, when I worked with them 20 years ago, they own their own building. There are 2 theaters in that building. It's a full-time staff of 26 people, and their annual budget is $2.5 million a year to do their shows. They do amazing things. So Midland in Texas is the same kind of thing. So there are these huge community theaters that are nonprofit organizations that are primarily volunteer driven, but they're led by professionals in their field, and they are managed by professionals in the nonprofit world who know how to make something sustainable and still keep it entertaining as a service to the community, right? So community theaters have this huge range of opportunities. And so I said, and I tell this to all of my students, even my theater students, even though you want to be in theater, if your priority is to have a family, to have a house, to have a day job, that you can depend upon and still want to do theater, there are opportunities. There are a few here in town. There's tons of them in Colorado. In Minneapolis, at one time there were 33 different theater companies and another 30 different community theaters in the metro area of Minneapolis. When I lived in Madison, Wisconsin, there were 5 community theaters within 45 minutes of each other. And so I was working during the day for an ad agency doing marketing, and at the same time every night I was off to one of those theaters directing or costuming. So there's all kinds of opportunities depending on how far you want to get into it, how far down the rabbit hole you want to go. I think I told you this with, again, that I wanted to get into professional theater. I was doing a lot of local directing, and the opportunity came up that they said, do you want to go on tour? We need somebody. We're hiring. This was July. We're hiring in August. Do you want to go? They're looking for a hair person. Great. I'd love to try. I did. Some of them are quicker than that. I had auditioned for a company in Nebraska that didn't hire me, and somebody was in a car accident. They were okay, but they wouldn't be able to do the show. And the company called me on a Friday and said, can you be here on Monday to start rehearsals? Sure. If you've got that flexibility, there are opportunities and things that you can do. So there are levels of commitment that you're going to make to that. If you're all in and you really want to make a living at it, then there are programs that lead you into the professional world. If you want to be a playwright, if you love writing and you want to write plays, the University of Idaho up in Moscow, the chairman of their department is a published playwright. Robert Casely has a bunch of plays out professionally. He's produced all over the world, and he teaches playwriting. So if you go from Casper College with your associate's degree to Moscow and get a BFA in playwriting or an MFA in playwriting, you are almost assured of having work when you get out. If you want to be a stage manager, like our friend on the video, you go to, and there are a bunch of schools, because there's Mankato State in Minnesota, Millikan in Illinois, UNC in Colorado. You transfer to those schools, get a BFA as a stage manager, and there are always jobs for stage managers. And stage managers are part of the Actors Equity Association, which we're going to talk about unions here in a second. But good stage managers always have work. I always have work because I can sew, I can design, I can do hair and makeup. And so there's always something coming up. I was talking to the business agent for the event center here. He came in this afternoon. He said, what are you doing Friday? I said, well, I'm working in the shop on the show. He said, do you want to go do the wardrobe for Winona Judd? She needs somebody to go in at 4 o'clock and get ready for her concert. Sure. For $24 an hour to go up and steam and prep Winona Judd and maybe get to hear the concert for free? I'll do that, And so, depending on your skill level and depending on how many people know you, stuff like that comes up all the time. I'm always getting emails from company managers in Vegas saying somebody had a baby, and so one of my dressers is going to be gone for 2 weeks because she's got to go take care of her daughter. Can you come in and run a show in Vegas for 2 weeks? That stuff happens all the time. And so knowing how far you want to get into it, or if you don't want to get into it, cool. It's up to you, and it's got to be on your comfort level. Now, in terms of getting into that higher up professional work, there are 2 main unions. IATSE, IATSE, is the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. That's all technicians, projectionists for movie theaters. It's it's the stagehand union, and it's international. It's Canada, it's U.S., it's Mexico. There's a few things, a few chapters out in Europe, and each local has a territory. So in Casper here, because Wyoming doesn't have that many needs, there's Casper, there's Cheyenne, and then there's Fort Collins. So those are the three unions we're working with. Billings, I think, is the other one up north. But I don't know if you heard in the news, saw it on TV or whatever, about the big summer camp that the Seventh-day Adventists did in Gillette this summer. And so they pull all of that together. Well, it was at the Camplex, and the Camplex has a contract with the union for professional support. So our folks from down here went up to Gillette. There were 10 or 12, I think he said. They're paid by the hour with a daily minimum. Their hotel was paid and their travel was paid for the 10 days they were up there. And the skill level is, do you know how to handle a screwdriver? Do you have steel-toed boots and good gloves? Everything else they train. And so those opportunities, and so it goes everything from setting up a convention or setting up pipe and drape and tables. I know that like the Green Bay local, it's actually northeast Wisconsin, Green Bay and Appleton has what is called EAA, Experimental Aeronautics Association, which is basically any kind of flying machine. And it's everything from Ford having the big engines for the airplanes to these little build-it-in-your-garage helicopter kits. And so it becomes the busiest airport in the world for 3 days in Appleton, Wisconsin. Well, they have an agreement with the union that the week before, the union comes in. They prep all of the airfield. They set up tables. They set up all the pipe and drape for the booths so that all of the vendors and exhibitors have a place to go. There are huge charts that say, booth number 47 needs 4 chairs. Booth number 48 needs 2 chairs. And so all of that setup gets done. Then running of the show, and then for 5 days afterwards, it all gets packed up and put back in storage and shipped. And so there's 3 weeks of work there that's all at union wage every year at the end of July. And so the union covers all of that. It also covers what we do, which is hair, makeup, costumes. And so I get paid when I'm up at the event center. I get paid by my union wages. There's a 4-hour minimum. If I step foot in the building, I get paid for 4 hours. Whether I work 2, 3, 4, I can work up to 5, but at 5 hours I have to take a break. And so then I get paid for 5 hours. I have to take at least an hour break, and then I can go back again. The second call normally isn't a minimum, and so normally it's, if I go back for 2 hours, I go back for 2 hours. But that's how the system works, but it protects me in terms of I can only work so many hours before I get paid a bonus. When I was on tour, my bonus checks were stupid crazy some weeks because bless you, if I have a 10-hour day and something goes wrong with another department and I don't get a lunch break, I get an extra $45 on my check for that day. Those are the kinds of things they take care of us, and that's why IATSE is really cool that way. I've been a member since 2004, and so I can pretty much work in any professional theater for whatever they hire me for. AEA, which is Actors Equity Association, developed a little bit later, but it's the Actors Equity, usually just called Equity. It's for the performers. Stage managers belong usually to both IATSE and to Actors Equity, but if they only belong to one union, it's Equity. Equity has the same kind of rules. It's a different set slightly in terms of how long you can rehearse, how many hours a day total, when your breaks have to be, what your chain of command is, what the protocols are, and what kind of expectations can be set for you. I'll show you a clip on Thursday that always makes me giggle because in the producers, there's part of the whole story is that these two men are trying to put on the worst play ever. Because if you collect all of this money in investments and it closes, you don't have to pay the investors back. And so they get all of these little old ladies to write these checks and collect all of this money, hoping to create the biggest flop on Broadway, and it becomes a success and they go to prison. But it's a really funny show, and we'll watch part of it on Thursday. But the thing is that in the original production, the little old ladies have a big production number, and they dance with walkers, and it's a tap number with walkers. It's really funny, really, really cute. And some of the dancers have to stand on the braces of the walker as part of the choreography. The dancers that had to stand on those braces got a bonus because that was considered unusual requirements for a tap number. And so they got what is the equivalent of hazard pay for stepping up off the floor and standing on something while they were tap dancing. So equity protects you from all of those kinds of things. We've all heard about just miserable, horrible, nightmarish, dress rehearsals that go until 2 a.m. Well, there are rules that say if we started at 10 a.m, we're not going past 11 at night. If you started at 9, you're not going past 10. And you have to have two 1-hour breaks in there. Every hour you go past that, you go into overtime. And so even for a rehearsal, when you stop and think that me sitting in as a wardrobe supervisor on a rehearsal that's going into overtime, I'm getting $45 an hour. Every one of my crew is getting $45 an hour. Every actor is getting $45 an hour. So when you look at a company of 116 people all going into overtime, that costs money. And in the outside world, they are going to do everything they can to avoid that. When Les Mis first opened on Broadway, there was a big deal because the show ran exactly 2.5 hours. If there was any delay in starting, or if intermission ran long, or if the applause went really long because one of the performances was really, really brilliant, and it went past 2.5 hours, the orchestra went into overtime. And so they had to negotiate a special deal with the musicians union to give them the leeway of saying, if we go into overtime, we are negotiating that calculation. Or you can go so many minutes, but then, because the show was booked for a certain number of minutes by Actors Equity, and if it went over, the musicians went into overtime. And so there was a huge thing about how they were going to handle this. So there are all of these things that go into it. Now, in order to be in the stagehands union, it varies local to local. Here in Casper, if you've worked 10 jobs as an overhire, so they've hired everybody they have in the union and they need 5 more people, and you get hired to step in for that day. You do 10 of those jobs, you pay a $600 initiation fee, and you can join the union. You become part of the union. And then your annual dues are, I think, $250. They're not crazy expensive. In Wisconsin, there were membership applications written on bar napkins. And, a bar napkin and a $100 bill gets you into the union in Wisconsin. And then you get the training, and then you get the perks, you get the healthcare benefits. Because I worked for a lot of non-professional theaters, my pension from the union is not huge. It'll pay the gas bill every month. It'll keep the house warm, kind of thing. But those kind of perks are available. Healthcare, 401k, retirement, all of that stuff is available if you're at that level, and you can get into that level. If you're an actor, getting into the union now means if you've worked for a union company to do 3 shows, then you can apply and pay the initiation fee, and I think the initiation fee is like $3,000. But then you're in it for life. You're a member of the Actors Union. Screen Actors Guild is the same kind of thing. Once you've done a television show or a movie, you're in. You've automatically qualified. And so you're part of the Screen Actors Guild. So those unions are really, really important. And again, when we talk about those tragedies that created the systems for safety, same kinds of things have happened to create the unions in terms of the entertainment industry. Now, I've had huge fights with people in Wyoming because I've worked for the unions the past 20 years. I strongly support those protections, right? And so people who think that acting is in the art, that theater is in the art of what you do and the passion and the commitment. And so I've been called an agent of the entertainment industrial complex.
So it sounds like they were like mashing things together and they're like,
You're not an artist,
you're not an artist.
right?
You're
Right?
wrong.
And so it's been really interesting hearing some of that here in Casper, because it's I'm not really an artist because I do it because I'm a professional in the union, and I'm not really following my passion. Well, I am following. I mean, I'm still designing, I'm still drawing, I'm still creating. I just do it for myself, but I also do it for a living, and I'm protected by all of these other standards. So IATSE and Actors Equity, the biggest difference between the two is that Actors Equity, once you become a union actor, you can only work with a union contract. So once you're equity, you have to work as an equity actor only. You can get permission once in a while. You have to fill out a lot of paperwork, and you can get permission to do a benefit or be the lead in a community theater show. But they really want your union dues and your talent to be supported by the union. Again, the company in Omaha, every time they do a big show with a big lead, if they're doing Hello Dolly, they will put money in their budget to hire an equity actress to play Dolly. If they're doing Funny Girl, they will put in their budget money to hire Fanny Brice and Nikki Arnstein, right? If they get somebody from the community that can do it and they love that work, great. They can do that. But they have a contract that says they've got that in their budget and they can do that, and they have the facilities to support it. There's a little company in Macon, Missouri, so St. Louis, Kansas City, and Kansas City, St. Louis, and what's down here? Columbia, the University in Columbia. So right in the middle of all these, an hour and a half from everybody in the middle of nowhere, Missouri, is this little company called Maples Rep that has a letter of agreement with Actors Equity that every major show, any show with more than 7 people in it, is going to have at least 2 equity people in it, and the stage managers will be equity. So all of the shows they do are run by union regulations. So even if you're not part of the union, you get paid a fair wage. You don't get the benefits, but you get paid a fair wage. You're working under union environment, and you get then, like I said, those 3 shows checked off, those boxes checked to say I worked with an equity company, and so you can become a member of the union. So there are different levels of that in Actors Equity. Like I said, once you become equity, you can only work in equity theaters. IATSE, on the other hand, there are, I think, 26 union stagehands in Casper. And so when they have a call for 110 to do like the Hosier concert, where they had all of that set up for 2 days and running the concert and everything, that was like 110 people. And so then there's a lot of opportunities for people who aren't part of the union to get the work. And so that's cool. If I'm in a position, which I have been, I don't live in Chicago, I don't live in New York, I don't live in LA, and I never have. And so I don't have the opportunity to work full-time as a union stagehand. So the union gives me permission to take non-union work. So I can maintain my union membership as IATSE, but still do jobs that aren't union. Because I'm a teacher, I can go to UNC and work for the summer because that's educational and summer stock. I can go to Missouri and work for that company because that's a union setup. Their stagehands aren't necessarily all union, but because we're run under an equity contract, the standards are such that they allow me to do that. Does all that make sense? It's a lot. It's huge. But when you look at all of the, like I say, that range of opportunity, what do you want to do if you're interested? How involved do you want to be? You can be everything from, hey, I've got Thursday nights from 6 to 8 while my kids are playing hockey. I can come over and help build sets. You can stay active. There's still stuff going on. There's still opportunities. I know that in Wyoming, Cheyenne Little Theater, they are always working. They've got 2 buildings. They've got lots of stuff going on. They're all volunteer. Rock Springs, Evanston, Casper has 3 theater companies, plus the Children's Theater. Gillette has a company. Sheridan has a company. All of those communities have community theaters, and so there are places to go and enjoy being part of the social group, but also building sets, painting, sewing, whatever. And so you can go from, I only want to work 2 days a week, volunteer just for the fun of it, that's my therapy or that's whatever, to in it hardcore all the time, and anywhere in between. So it just depends on where you are and how involved you want to get, what opportunities you have to be participating in theater after high school. That's a big dump of what can happen. All right? Any questions on that? Yeah.
So when it comes to having a degree in technical theater or anything like that versus practical experience, like you have experience with like either school theater or community theater, how the professional world views that.
Mm-hmm. It depends on who's hiring you. When I joined the tour of the producers doing hair and makeup, they looked at the shows I've done. They didn't ask about my degree. They didn't ask if I had a cosmetology license. They looked at what I could do, and they looked at my attitude and said, he can do the job, we want to work with him. And they gave me the job. When I came to work here, there were certain jobs that they offered me back when I was freelancing that they would offer me something here, and in order to process my contract needed my transcripts from my bachelor's degree. And I'm like, why? And it's because it's an educational institution, we need to have your transcripts. And I was like, no, thank you. That's not the job I'm looking for. So it just depends. Like I said, it's more about how well prepared you are for the job you're applying for, than it is what degree you have. There are a few people who have left here. We've had two of our better actors leave here with an associate's degree and go to LA and do TV, or go out to Chicago and break into the theater family out there. It can be done if you're really, really good, but again, what the degree gives you is the exposure to all of the different genres and the material and the opportunity to make mistakes. If you're in an educational theater, our job is not to make sure that you're doing Broadway quality shows. Our job is to make sure you're doing the best you can with what you've got to work with. And if you flub it up, cool. Let's find out how to not do that again. Because it's about education. It's not about the art form. It's not about selling the tickets, right? My job is to prepare our students. And so you get the opportunity in community theaters or in educational theater to make mistakes and to not necessarily do your best to find out why that is and how to fix it. But yeah, nobody ever asked to see my diploma from my bachelor's or my master's. And I tell a lot of students, it's, first of all, it doesn't matter how good you are. If they don't want to work with you, they're not going to hire you, right? But at the same time, getting the job is usually pretty easy. It's keeping the job and getting the next one. One of the things I look at on a resume when I'm looking at a young professional is they've done 10 professional jobs and they're 20 or 21. Cool. Have any of those people asked them back to work again? Because that will tell you whether or not they were good at what they did. You know? And so I purposely will take opportunities that take me back to Missouri. Do I love being in Missouri? No. It's as isolated as it is here. They don't have a Target. That's how small that town is. But I love working with those people, and the crazy little man that runs the theater owns half this downtown area. So this little red brick building that used to be a restaurant that he bought now is a costume shop, and the upstairs is a rehearsal hall. And on the corner, he runs, his aunt runs a thrift store out of the main floor, but upstairs those apartments, he maintains those apartments as actor housing. And so he can offer his actors housing during the summertime. And this crazy little man owns half of this downtown because he owns this building, and this part of it's for the theater and this part is for something else. And he owns this building, and it's wonderful to go play there for the summer. And his summer season is only 16 weeks, and pays decent. So, and I get to work with people who've been on Broadway, who've been on, national tours. So yeah, when they did Sound of Music this summer, the man who played the captain, the lead, and his wife, she had toured with Mamma Mia, and he had toured with Dear Evan Hansen. He was one of the dads on Dear Evan Hansen with Jeff, my partner. So it's like, that's how small this world is. But they were in Sound of Music together because they were a husband and wife. They had nothing going on for the summer. They were getting paid equity wages. They took the job. So it's, it's those kinds of things. Like, I like working for them, so I'll go back to them again. UNC, if they called me again, they've tried to hire me 3 times to go to there instead of teaching here. But the timing was never right. But to go down and do the summer shows, love it. Make some extra money, go play. Yeah, why not? Anything else? I know it's only 1:54.
Sorry, I was putting that away 'cause
Yeah, no, that's, yes, sir.
So was there some way that you networked when you first started out to get a name?
Yes,
People's
a
mouths?
couple of things I did. The most important thing I did was that when I was a student at a 4-year college, University of Wisconsin in Whitewater, my advisor was the head of the Cultural Affairs Committee. So anytime artists came to campus, I was the first one they called to go do prep for the show or to help run the show or to whatever they needed. If it wasn't a union gig, I could go do it. And so I was doing wigs, I was doing wardrobe for ballet companies, I was doing all kinds of fun stuff. And so I was learning how to do it, but I was also meeting and working with the people that were on tour. So that was a huge help. Working as a local hand, I could, like me working up at the event center, they know what my skill level is, and so I'm one of the first people they call. If they only need one person to go up and get a show ready, Lindsay Sterling, when they were here, when she and her group were here, there were 2 of us, me and a lady who's not a barber, she's a beautician here in town, but she doesn't work a lot in her shop anymore, and she and I were the ones that they called to do Lindsay Sterling's costumes. And it's take them out of the box, do the laundry, get them ready for the show, get it all hung up. That was what we did. And so you get paid for 4 hours to go prep. I did Elton John when he was here. And so, like I said, this morning, Lorenzo comes in and says, can you do Friday to get Winona Judd's wardrobe ready for her concert? So people, by doing the work, people know what you can do and they'll call you back again. One of the first big tours I did, my neighbor we worked together as local stage hands in Green Bay. She had been out on tour with this company a couple of times. She had met her husband. They literally were across the street from me. But we worked at the event center together in Green Bay. And when she was getting ready to go out on a tour, she said, the company is looking for a wardrobe assistant for My Fair Lady. And do you want to go out on tour? And so because she knew me and knew what I could do, she said, do you want to go out on tour? I said, sure.
Then you got to meet all those people.
And I got to meet all these amazing people. And I was on that tour for 4 months before they offered me my own tour, because another tour was going out, and they said, you want to be wardrobe supervisor on this one? Do you know anybody who can do hair to take over for you? And at the time, I had an assistant who could do hair, who had been an assistant in Green Bay. And I said, well, let's bring Travis in and see if he can do it. So they were moving me to another tour. They brought Travis in, learned my stuff for a week, then I went to the other tour. And it's just because they know what I can do, they hire me. And so, yeah, it's building that network, but also just being nice to people, being professional, having boundaries. You know, like I said, did I tell you the story about how I got Jersey Boys and Gerby saying, I need your resume tonight?
Oh, mm-hmm.
You know, and I was like, okay, well, it just happened that I had a jump drive in my pocket that had my resume on it. So we saw the show. I went back to Jeff's apartment there in Milwaukee, and that night I emailed her a resume. But because she had been the wardrobe supervisor on the first national tour of Footloose in 2004, whatever, I'd already worked for her for a few days, once or twice. And so when I saw her then, she knew what I could do. And so, yeah, so it was like, no, I need it now. Okay. And, yeah, and I was, like I said, I was working in Madison for an ad agency doing marketing, which I loved, and doing theater at night, which was great. And got the opportunity to go full-time on the road with an open-ended contract.
That's awesome.
as a star dresser. So it's like, cool. And again, like you say, meeting all these amazing people who are now all over the world doing cool stuff. So yeah, it's being nice to people, knowing who to work with, and doing your best.
Have you been able to do anything international?
Yes, I've been to, well, Alaska 4 times, but I've done Mexico. I've been into Canada a bunch of times. The Performing Arts Center in Calgary, the Alberta government, the provincial government, had this huge bucket of money to build 2 performing arts centers, one in Edmonton and one in Calgary. And they realized that if they built the same center, they had one architect design the theater, they could build that theater in 2 places and save money, and then have more money to put into the building. And so the Performing Arts Center in Calgary, which is on the campus at the university, is the exact same theater as the one in Edmonton on the university campus. So it's really cool. So I've done a bunch of things in Canada. The one tour I did was China for 10 weeks. Hangzhou, which is 45 minutes outside of Shanghai, which is was on the Silk Road. It's one of the green tea capitals of the world. Dragon Well green tea comes from Hangzhou. There's a couple of lakes there, and the pearls that come out of the lakes are lavender. They're purple. So they're gorgeous. And we were there to open a brand new performing arts center doing The Sound of Music. Turns out that The Sound of Music is how they teach English to Chinese students. And so, because the songs are so simple, because the story is simple, and so they use The Sound of Music to teach English. So everybody knows The Sound of Music. So if you go into China with a tour of The Sound of Music, everybody wants to go see. So I was in Hangzhou for 4 weeks, and then down to Hong Kong for 6 weeks. And there is a performing arts school in Hong Kong, and so we were set up in there to do for 6 weeks. And so I've done China, and that's where I learned to scuba dive, because it's like, what are you going to do in China for 6 weeks? I mean, I had a suit made, I had all kinds of, ate all kinds of cool stuff. I learned to scuba dive. So that was China. I've been to Tokyo twice, once with the producers and once with Jersey Boys. Producers and Sister Act. And played in these, the first time 25 years ago when I was on Producers, we played in Shinjuku. Is it Gwen Stefani who has the Shinjuku Girls? That's actually a really cool neighborhood. It's gorgeous. It's really fun. And there was this theater in a high-rise apartment building, and we were like 5 blocks from the main shopping area. And so we were there 6 or 8 weeks the first time with Producers. And then with Sister Act, we got to go, we were just in Tokyo, but the theater that I had been in the first time was destroyed by an earthquake. So we were in a brand new theater that they had built. And this theater, the lobby of the theater was on the 14th floor. So cool. So you go in on the shopping level, take the elevator up to the 10th floor for wardrobe and all the support, but then the lobby of the theater is the 14th floor, and it's gorgeous. That big, huge crosswalk, that's one of the busiest crosswalks in the world.
Shibuya Scramble.
Yep. The lobby of the theater looks down on that. It's just so cool. And then the theater itself is 14, 15, and 16. But I was there for a bunch of weeks doing Sister Act. So yeah, I get to go all over the place. I dodged a bullet, but one of the nuns from Sister Act was on a tour of Phantom, in Saudi Arabia. And they offered me, this is 2 years ago, they offered me 6 months in Saudi Arabia with Phantom of the Opera. And it was 2 months in Dubai, and then 2 months someplace else, and 2 months someplace else. And I came this close to going, and then their management started to fall apart, and communication started to break down. And I found out from the person who had put me in contact with them in the first place. Again, they called and said, they asked their performers, do you know anybody who has international experience in hair and makeup and wardrobe? And of course she went, yeah, we were just in Tokyo doing Sister Act 3 years ago. And so they called me and said, 3 rounds of interviews, and we talked about everything, and we were this close to signing a contract, and then things started falling apart. And she said later, you dodged a bullet, she said, because the whole thing just went weird. It's like, okay. It's also, it was a little nerve-wracking because a middle-aged gay man going to Saudi Arabia is not the safest thing to do right now. But I did a lot of research and did a lot, it's like, nope, you'll be okay as long as you stay with the company in your neighborhoods. So I was like, okay. But yeah, I've been all over.
I would love to go back to Tokyo.
In a heartbeat.
I just came back from there.
Did you really?
Yeah, I went this summer.
Oh.
It was awesome.
I was.
Did you go to high school?
The high school?
Are you from Casper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you go to Kelly Walsh?
No.
Oh.
No,
With-
I'm 24. I just got out of
With the military.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm gonna go have fun, and went to Japan.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's
It was
just.
worth it. Oh my god.
Oh.
I'm broke now, but
When I left, I kept sick because it was the second time I was there, and I was like, I want to be back 2 or 3 years. Well, this is now 11 years ago, but I was like, no, I will go back anytime somebody offers me a job. It doesn't matter what the pay is. I'll go.
Coolest country ever.
I just
I miss it.
so incredibly civilized.
I've not been there
And-
since 2012, and
Yeah.
I've been dying to go back.
Yeah, it's just one of the coolest places on the planet. And that one of my screensavers is the Royal Gardens in Shinjuku,
Nice.
because it's like that's just peace. Yeah.
You got to watch in the Royal Gardens I don't want to call them monks, but they were wearing like
Oh,
robes and stuff
sure.
that came out, and they did like the throat singing thing. And they were
Oh,
down.
very
Oh,
cool.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that stuff is so cool.
Yeah, I climbed Mount Fuji. That was cool. The first time I was out there, I climbed Mount Fuji. We went we had a matinee on a Sunday that was at noon, so it was noon to 2:30. We were done at 2:30, and you jump on a train. You can be at base camp by 7 o'clock at night. Start climbing at 8, and you're at the top for sunrise. So cool. Yeah, I would go back to Tokyo in a heartbeat.
What season were you there? Like cherry blossom season? Or?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just missed it. When I was
Did
there.
you? The first time was cherry blossom season. The second time was just after. So a lot of the rose gardens in the Royal Garden were still green, but not as full of flowers.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's one of my screensavers is the Shinjuku Gardens. Yeah, and even going down Kamakura, going down to the Big Buddha down in Kamakura. There's the largest freestanding bronze Buddha in Japan is at Kamakura. It's a little fishing
Oh, really?
village.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I saw it. No, there was one when we went to Kyoto. There was one at the top of that hill.
Yes.
There's a giant Buddha.
That's
statue.
that's the other one. Yeah. It's the one at Kamakura has been knocked over by tsunamis twice because it's no building. And the one at the top of the mountain is
Yeah, I'm
protected.
probably safe, Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kamakura, the first time we were there, like you say, the people are so amazing. The first time we were there, it wasn't as I don't want to say civilized, but it wasn't as developed. It was still a fishing village, and there's no place to eat. we'd taken the train from Tokyo out to Kamakura, and there was no place to eat. So we found this restaurant that had this wonderful display in the window of all kinds of food. And there were 6 of us. And of course, the lady understood that we didn't speak Japanese, so she came out to the window and we pointed at what we wanted. And that's how we ordered our lunch that day. So sweet, so generous. And things like personal responsibility and respect. It's like you go in and you go into a store and it's raining, you put your umbrella in the bucket by the door.
And it's still there when
And
you
it's
leave.
still there when you leave. Nobody would think of it's not theirs. They wouldn't take it.
Same with the bike.
Same with the exactly. And so yeah, just that kind of civilization.
There was only one bad thing in Japan, and it was the tourists.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
We went to a
Oh, God.
museum in Osaka, and there were like these kids in there, that like
Oh.
American kids, that were just being the worst, and their parents were not doing anything about it. And I was
Oh
like, "These poor-
no.
The poor Japanese people are having to deal with your stupidity right now.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, recently they actually had a major banning of tourists going to see the geishas and everything
Good.
because they would constantly harass them, trying to take pictures, trying to
Yeah.
mess with the geishas,
I'm glad.
and being absolutely disrespectful.
Stop it.
Yeah.
And the Japanese government actually recently put a huge ban against tourists even entering the area where the geishas are
Mhm.
Yeah.
because of how disrespectful and tactless they are.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When I was there, what was I there with kids? Oh, Sound of Music. When we were in China, and we're in Hong Kong, and one of the moms would only take her kids to McDonald's because she trusted the food instead of going, teaching these kids of the other opportunities. And she actually, they have a laminated menu, so you can point to what you want and didn't have to try and order it. And she would point to, her McChicken sandwich, and if it didn't come out tasting like she thought it should, she'd yell at the people. And it's like, what kind of example are you setting for your kids? It's not there. You're in a different country. It's not going, but yeah, it's just the American tourists are the worst.
Even out of staters, like people
Oh,
who are
yeah.
around here are nasty,
Yeah.
rude.
Yeah.
There are a couple of very kind ones, but like people from Colorado, they come to the theaters and they're just like, "Hey, where's our trash go?" And
Yeah.
that's not where it goes.
That's-
There's a trash can out the theater. You gotta go that way anyway.
Right, take it that way. Take it with you. Yeah, it's amazing how.
People are rude on the counter. You're like, hey.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna let you go. Turn the